I still remember that night as if it happened yesterday. The night I found myself walking through the doors of an empty hospital that should have been alive with voices, footsteps, and the steady rhythm of machines. But instead, it was silent, too silent. I was working late that evening, finishing my shift at a diner on the edge of town. My best friend, Ivy, had called earlier, complaining of sharp chest pain and dizziness. She lived alone, and since she didn't pick up when I called back, I panicked. Without thinking twice, I rushed to St. Helena's General Hospital, the nearest one in our area. I had been there before, years ago, when my uncle had surgery. I remembered the chaos, the stretchers rushing through hallways, the beeping monitors, and the endless voices of doctors and nurses. But when I walked through those glass doors this time, something was very wrong. The lobby lights were flickering, the chairs were empty, and the receptionist's desk stood abandoned. No nurses, no visitors, no sound of phones ringing, just silence. Like the building itself was holding its breath. My voice echoed when I whispered, "Hello? Is anyone here?" But there was no answer. My footsteps on the tile floor felt louder than they should have, bouncing off the walls like the hospital was mocking me. At first, I thought maybe I had the wrong place. Maybe I was so worried about Ivy that I had driven to the wrong hospital. But no, the faded sign outside clearly said St. Helena's General. I grabbed my phone to call Ivy again, but the screen showed no signal. My heart dropped. In the middle of a city, no signal? That didn't make sense. I walked further inside, past the darkened waiting area, toward the emergency ward. That's when I noticed something chilling. Half-drunk coffee cups still sitting on desks. A wheelchair left in the middle of the hall. Papers scattered as if everyone had left in a hurry. But where had they gone? And why hadn't anyone locked the place? My fear grew with each step, but my love for Ivy was stronger. I pushed open the doors to the patient wing, expecting to hear voices, maybe even a groan from behind one of the doors. Instead, all I heard was the faint buzzing of a fluorescent light and my own breathing. Room after room, I found empty beds, some with sheets half pulled as though someone had just gotten up. An IV bag still hung, dripping on the floor. A heart monitor blinked with a green light but made no sound. And in one room, I saw something that sent chills crawling up my spine. A child's teddy bear sitting neatly on a hospital bed, as if waiting for its owner to return. By now, I wanted to run, to leave this nightmare, but then I remembered Ivy. I forced myself to keep going, whispering her name. "Ivy, are you here?" My voice cracked in the silence. Then faintly, from somewhere deeper in the hospital, I thought I heard it. A whisper. My name. Someone was calling my name. I followed the sound down a long hallway where the lights flickered, shadows stretching across the floor. The air grew colder, the kind of cold that bites your skin. My footsteps slowed, my heart raced. Finally, I reached a door at the very end of the hall. It was half open. I pushed it gently and stepped inside. It was the ICU, but it looked abandoned for years. Dust covered the machines, cobwebs hung in corners, and yet one bed had fresh sheets. And on that bed, my phone was laying there. My phone! But how? I had it in my pocket just minutes ago. Trembling, I picked it up. The screen lit up and showed a single new message. It was from Ivy. The message said, "Leave now, before it's too late." My blood ran cold. Before I could even process, the lights above me flickered violently, and I heard something, a low, heavy breathing behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. Still, I felt watched, as though eyes were crawling over me from every corner. My instinct screamed to run. I bolted out of the room, sprinting down the hallway, my footsteps echoing like gunshots in the silence. But no matter how far I ran, the hallways stretched longer, bending into turns I didn't remember. Doors appeared where they shouldn't, and I realized with horror that the hospital was changing, like it was alive, trapping me inside. My chest burned and my breath came out in sharp gasps, but I couldn't stop. At last, I crashed through a set of double doors and stumbled into the main lobby again, except now it wasn't the same. The lights were dimmer, the receptionist's desk was broken. The front doors I had entered through were now chained shut from the inside. My panic turned to terror. I yanked the chains, banged on the glass, screamed for help, but nothing. The city lights outside were gone, swallowed by thick fog. Then I saw movement, a figure standing at the far end of the lobby, tall, broad shoulders, a doctor's coat. My heart leapt. Maybe someone could help me. But as he stepped closer, I realized his face wasn't right. His eyes were empty sockets, his mouth stretched to a permanent, twisted smile. My knees almost gave out as I stumbled backward. He raised his hand slowly, pointing at me, and whispered in a rasping voice, "You shouldn't be here." I don't remember how I found the strength, but I ran again, ducking through corridors, pushing random doors. My only thought was survival. Finally, I burst through a stairwell, the smell of rust and mold overwhelming. I climbed higher and higher until I reached the rooftop. The cold night air hit me like a slap, and I collapsed, gasping, my whole body trembling. From the rooftop, I looked down, expecting to see the busy streets of Chicago, but what I saw froze me to the core. The hospital was surrounded by nothing. No city, no cars, no lights. Just endless darkness stretching in every direction. I screamed Ivy's name one last time, but my voice was swallowed by the void. Then my phone buzzed again. With shaking hands, I unlocked it. A new message, not from Ivy. This one said, "Welcome to St. Helena's. You're one of us now." The screen went black, and behind me, I heard footsteps.